is really the protocol. So as a doctor, when you see that people don't look at the dossier, they don't look at details, and then they just lump everything under, how is it that these colleagues of yours are falling prey? And you talk about Steve Hassan. One of the classes I took in psychology is the psychology of cults. And Steve Hassan is used, to deprogram people. So maybe you can talk about how all your colleagues are pretty much programmed.
Oh yeah, they are programmed. And for sure, I will tell you, there's a lot of events that we're at. I actually met you up at Grand Rapids at a part of the Reawaken tour. And there's a lot of us speaking, medical doctors who are out speaking against the murderous protocols in hospital, the ill-advised protocols. And this weekend, I was sitting in Missouri last weekend, and I'm sitting there with Dr. Lee Merritt of the American Frontline Doctors. And we're sitting there talking at breakfast, and she looks at me and she goes, Dr. Ardis, you know why we're the only ones out there speaking, right? And why so many docs and hospitals aren't speaking out. And I said, why? And she goes, because we're independent of the hospitals. We aren't employees of hospitals. And you just need to understand this. All Americans, you are not being treated freely by critically thinking doctors free to practice medicines as they've seen clinical in their experience by any doctor in any hospital in America. None of them are free to treat you clinically from their experience or their expertise. Zero, not a single one of them. They are all employees of hospitals, and the boards of these hospitals and the administrators are their employers. So the medical doctors that are in the room with you are being told, you're our employee. You will actually follow our hospital mandated protocols. And if you don't, you will be fired. Your paychecks will be removed. You can no longer pay for your multiple houses, your children's private schools, your boats, your golf club memberships. This is the threat to the MDs. It is not because they don't know what they're doing. They're actually being told what they can and cannot do. And then their license are being threatened. And if you don't believe me and you haven't seen it, in 2008 was an incredible documentary put out on the entire corrupt hospital protocols and mandates of their medical doctors who are their employees. And the documentary is called Life for Sale. And they follow 10 hospitals in California, where you are right now in San Fran. There's 10 hospitals that are being sued at once for actually sending sick patients home from the hospital, telling them that they're well enough to go home, only to find out that they weren't well enough to go home and they died at home. And the families were now suing the hospitals for actually kicking them out early, only to find out, these families and their attorneys suing these hospitals, only to find out that the only reason why they were ever sent home early anyway, and most of them had pneumonia when they were sent home, is that whenever you as an individual go into a hospital, you have to understand this is what happens when you go into a hospital even today. You walk into a hospital, you give your symptoms, there's going to be a diagnosis. But before you're even given a diagnosis, behind the scenes, there's individuals being paid full time to call your insurance company to determine what insurance coverage the hospital gets for every single diagnosis code that insurance company will cover in a hospital setting. So before the doctors even come in and give you a diagnosis, they already have a whole list of every diagnosis code for pneumonia, for the flu, for an IV bag, for one saline shot, for one dose, for one antibiotic, for one hospital stay overnight. They already know what they're going to be paid to have you in their building. So the hospital administrators in this documentary were telling doctors that worked for them in hospitals, 2000s to 2008. They were told, if you have a patient that comes in and you diagnose them with pneumonia, the insurance companies that represent those patients, they are being given 5 days of hospital stays for that diagnosis code for pneumonia. On day 6, there's no longer insurance coverage, so you're going to kick them out on day 6. You're going to tell them, doctor, you're going to tell your patients and their loved ones that the patient is well enough to go home now, and we have to send you home. When in reality, it doesn't matter if they're sick or not. It doesn't matter how unwell they still are. that medical doctors were being told by their bosses, you send them home or your license will be revoked. You will no longer get a job here in California. This is what they would say.